days are cooler, nights are warmer, and I put the blame on you. Time moves slow, but my heart beats faster. When these eyes are looking right at you, you give me something to believe in, just what I needed. You're the closest.
Listener discretion is advised.
You mentioned that you went to prison.
Yes.
For what?
Trafficking cocaine. I used to sell crack, so I did a year.
How'd you get caught?
My niece hid the dope wrong, and so the police was watching, and so I had to do a year. I remember, you know what was hard about doing a year in jail? I miss my daughter going to kindergarten. I cannot ever get that back. Ashley was so mad at me for the first part of her life because I sold crack in front of her school. So I used to have this bit about she used to look out the window, and I think they used to do it on purpose. They would put her class on the side where her mama sold drugs. But I was a good mom. On her lunch break, I would go over there, eat lunch, and then go back outside and sell crack.
Listen.
And the principal did not like me selling drugs out there. And it really didn't hit home till Ashley came to me one day. She said, I get tired of looking at my school one day and seeing you and my niece at the time, little black, selling drugs in front of my school. She's like, why don't you find another corner? I said, no, we're going to find you another school because I was here first. So I transferred her.
No, she didn't move the child because the stacks were right.
Oh, Miss Pat. So when I heard this is an interview she did with Raven-Symone. Raven-Symone has a podcast, Tea Time or something. And Miss Pat was on as a guest. When I heard this, I was disgusted, actually. And if I'm being honest, I don't watch Miss Pat. I tried to watch the first season because she's too vulgar. Her comedy is not my comedy. It's not what I enjoy, And if I'm being honest, I think I might judge her, very hard. Like, is this the best we can do? Why don't we elevate? Like, I'm that person. But I kept listening, and I got convicted. I got convicted to the point where I reached out to my sister and I was like, we got to have this conversation today because, first of all, we categorize and put people in boxes for our own comfort because in many ways, what I'm actually saying is I don't want other people to think that's how we all are, so we tend to separate ourselves from our own folk without understanding the condition that led her to be there, but also where she is now is so powerful because she can do so much more. And I was like, oh, so I had to convict her. I've been convicted so much. I should be right there, in jail. But I got my bail set. So one of the people that came with the bail, let me welcome to the show. She is, of course, she has a show here, right here on Urban View on Sundays, the Dr. Robin Show, noon Eastern, on 126 Sundays. And she also has a book, The Invisible Ache, with Courtney B. Vance, where she is with Courtney B. Vance going over all of the ways in which Black men in particular can heal from trauma and the things that they endure. And she's here with us once a month. Dr. Robin, let me welcome Dr. Robin L. Smith. Hi.
It's so good to be here. And actually, the Dr. Robin show is at 11 a.m.
11. Who's at 12? I'm sorry. 11 to noon. You're right.
11 to noon.
Who's at noon? All right, doesn't matter. 11 to noon. Apologies. Yeah. So I was listening to this clip and I sent it to you because I was like, ma'am, is that so? You move your child out of school and didn't think to stop. But in that moment, what I didn't consider is that was her way of feeding her family and putting her child in that school and being able to clothe her and all. And it's not an excuse, right? Because we do make excuses for the things, but at least she was up and out of the house every day. And I know it sounds horrible, but as the interview went on, Dr. Robin, I was like, ooh, I had to sit back and really sit in it. So I want to play the second clip. The second clip starts to unfold something that, and maybe sitting with a person like Raven, who's not judging her, was very helpful. And it was a note to self. Because even if I don't show it, I'm probably judging. It probably comes out. It probably pours out. And I need to be better at that. But let's play the second clip, Smith.
My sister used to sell pussy to this white dude. And one day she wasn't out there when he pulled up, and I used to like wrestling. Ooh, I love to go to the wrestling, because baby, Ric Flair was the man.
He was really sexy.
So, and you know, they did wrestling in Atlanta back in those days.
Yeah.
I wanted to go to the wrestling man, and he said, is your sister? I said, no. I said, can you give me a ride downtown? And he said, yeah. So I had $6 to buy me a ticket. I didn't have no money for the food. I just wanted to go to the wrestling man, because that's how I grew up with my grandfather. So he said, you want to make a quick $20? And I said, yeah. And he said, watch me jack my dick. I was like, okay. I didn't know what jacking a dick was. He pulled out his little white dick, and it was like a little thumb. And he just a beating. I said, gotta get my money first. And he was like, oh, you looking? Yeah, I'm looking. All the way to the dome.
Literally to the dome. Listen.
And one time I jacked this man dick.
How old were you with this?
About 10.
Miss Pat, you were 10 years old?
Bro, I was young.
Okay, I need to stop. We're laughing at this topic
No,
right
this
now.
is fucking funny.
No, it's not. We're going to be very emotional really fast, and I don't do it. Do I do emotional?
She doesn't do emotional.
How the hell are you laughing about that right now?
When you laugh about what you've been through in life, you got control of it. I'm not going to sit here and whine over the life that I was given. I mean, look where I'm at today. When you cry about cards that was handed to you, then you don't ever get to flip them over to see if you won.
Dr. Robin, your thoughts about this?
I am, and I listened, when you sent it to me, I didn't know what you were sending, and I pushed play, was glad that I was by myself as I listened to it, because Miss Pat is so raw and she is so real. Her story is so layered in trauma and abuse from the time she was such a little girl. She was handed up, and I know you're going to play more, so I won't say more, but she was given over to, someone who was supposed to be safe and was sexually multiple times violated, she and her sister. And so when Raven asked, how can you laugh at this? This is, not funny. And then she said something that is so profound for people in general, but particularly for Black people who have been so dehumanized, that if you laugh at it, it cannot, what she is talking about, take your power. It can't take your strength. It can't kill you, even though it is big enough to have killed her. And so she's talking about something we all need to lean into, which is, what are our coping mechanisms when the worst that we could have imagined becomes our story? So yeah, it's not my kind of humor. And she is finding a way to talk about things that are simply too painful to discuss. I thought about a friend of mine, very close friend, who was sexually violated from the time she was 4. And I didn't meet her until she was, an adult woman, but she's rough around the edges. How she talks about sex, how she talks about sexuality is all so rough and raw. And I thought, and how could it not be? That at 4 years old, there was no tenderness, there was no covering. Her mother was not looking out for her. So we can easily judge something until we actually sit in it. Sit in it, imagining how Miss Pat has actually survived. There are many people who are strung out on drugs. We don't know why, because they haven't been able to articulate that they were raped multiple times. But she's actually putting language to a story that actually applies to, unfortunately, thousands, if not millions. So many.
This, for me, listening to this, we spend so much time being an offense of the discomfort that other people, like whether it's they park too close to me, or why is this homeless person here that I have to step over them? It's just, it's smelly. I'm on this train and this person is, why do they have to act like this? It's always about our comfort though. It's a self-centered way in which we move through the world. And listening to really sitting there, because I knew her story. I knew that she had this situation, been shot by the man, but really just listening for the first time, I was like, I backed up from myself and said, that's what we need to center that level of compassion, because people aren't just acting out, or even if I find the way that she communicates distasteful, there's a reason behind it. And if we don't center the reason, but just I'm offended, if we're always in offense instead of in humanity, I don't know how we move forward. So I'm playing these clips today, first of all, because I have a clinical, a person that is trained to help us with our healing, and also a pastor, who can do the soul work as well, inside out. I feel like this is where we are missing something in this country, whether it's somebody who walks 1,000 miles from another place in flip-flops to be here, but somehow they're vermin. They're a nuisance because maybe they smell bad. I don't know what it takes to walk 1,000 miles with no food, water, clothing, but you're leaving something horrific, and we don't have capacity to even understand that. They're just illegals.
Yeah.
That, that can be in a cage, and, these Haitians that come, that, they're dirty, they're smelly. Like, would you try walking 1,000 miles from someplace and just going with what's on your back? How would you smell? Like, we don't have any compassion here, and it's hurting us.
Or curiosity. So there's something I encourage people to do, which is, and myself, that as soon as I move into judgment, which is all the time, we're all judging things, I've trained myself to move into compassion. So when judgment shows up, when criticism shows up, I've trained my brain to then invite compassion to show up alongside my criticism, because the criticism is a story that I've made up about myself or someone else that has no curiosity in it, no curiosity about how someone might behave in a particular way or smell in a particular way. And so we hurt ourselves and others. We create barriers and walls, really, because we're so fragile. We want everyone to believe what we believe, or think the way we think, or judge the way we judge. And so Miss Pat is one example of someone who has a profoundly meaningful story that needs to be told. And what I believe is that not only because Raven, I assume, and Raven's producer, she didn't feel judged by them, but Karen, I do think that if you and I were to sit down with Miss Pat as well, she is who she is, but there is a depth.
Yes.
There is a depth.
I had her on the show, and this is what really convicted me, because the interview that we had was perfunctory. And it should have been so much more. So I feel like, I had her on, she's popular. The show, Tammy was on, I watched the episode, but, it wasn't really, I was like, Yeah. So, but this was the story, right? And my lack of curiosity. And so even as those of us in these spaces with platforms, if we can't put ourselves to the side to center the person, and what they can really deliver for your audience, then you don't really, and we're all developing and growing. So we're at different stages in our development. And so I don't expect everyone, I'm like almost ninja level. Yeah, I will say that, because I'm working on it too, because it doesn't just happen, right? Yes. These kinds of conversations that I have with myself make me better on these airwaves, right? And then to talk about them, because I imagine there's somebody that's been through what Miss Pat has been through. And then there's somebody that has judged somebody like Miss Pat's sister who is strung out. But I don't know what a 4-year-old, having their mother traffic them, which I'm gonna play the next clip. I don't know what that, your mommy,
Right.
if my mother
Right.
came home late, I was destroyed,
Mhm.
crying. Like if she was an hour late before, I remember being like, where is she? And this before cell phones. I'm like, my little mind's going to all the places. Did something happen to her? She get in an accident? Like I was ready to flip out. She was an
Yeah.
hour late, Dr. Rob, because my mother was always on time, home, dinner, the whole night. Hour late. I remember like it was yesterday. I was distraught. I can't imagine that woman selling me to somebody for
Yeah, but
money.
what
Like,
you're also describing, Karen, is your mother was not only reliable, but she was the stability that you could navigate your own life around.
that's right.
And so what a,
Privilege.
yes, it is. Yes, it is a privilege. It's a privilege that then creates other privileges when we have a mother, a father who is there, who we can, almost set our watches to. And if they don't come, we're unsettled because they are so predictable and so reliable. So I think you're right. What would that feel like? And I think about that with my mother, my father. Like, it's unimaginable that these people would have sold me. And yet we know there are people listening right now to the Karen Hunter show who are saying, that's my story. And the other thing, Karen, that is so important, I think, as well, particularly when we talk about religious communities, church communities and mosques, some of the language that Miss Pat is using about sex. They talk about, masturbation, how she's referring to genitals. And the thing is, that's the language that she grew up with. And so when we want someone, and you just said this, to speak in a way that keeps me comfortable, it is quite likely that they're not going to talk to me at all. Because if I need them to change up so that I'm comfortable when they're trying to tell me what happened to them, and I do this all the time, people say everything to me, and they say it in every kind of way, because I've created a space where it is not about my comfort, it is about their truth. And that's really what you are inviting all of us to do, and I am as well. I heard you say earlier about maturity. What does it mean to grow myself up?
What does it mean?
Yeah. I had someone once, not only once, but when people hear that I'm, an ordained minister, they might want, feel that they need to change what they're going to say. So I had someone who said, Jesus Christ, as a, not a curt, but in a angry way. So I've had people say that and not feel that they needed to change the language. And I've had people say it who then say, oh, I'm sorry. I hope that didn't offend you. And what I've said to them is, well, whose time are we on right now? I mean, this is about you, not about me. And this isn't about your watching your language so that I feel comfortable. And so this invitation, and I'm so glad you're playing everything she said, because this is more, and that's why I said she is wounded, but she is real to the core.
My days are cooler, nights are warmer, and I put the blame on you. Time moves slow, but my heart beats faster. When these eyes are looking right at you, right at you. You give me something to believe in, just what I needed. You're the closest.